that we are tracking on WION at this hour, where the historic deal has been signed at the White House, which marks the normalization of relations between Israel and two Arab nations, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. Now, at a lavish ceremony at the White House, hosted by US President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump, the foreign ministers of Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates signed what is now going to be known as the Abraham Accord with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The accord's been printed in 3 different languages, in English, Arabic and also in Hebrew.
The President of...
This is peace in the Middle East without blood all over the sand. I say it. Right now, it's been blood all over the sand for decades and decades and decades. That's all they do, is they fight and kill people, and nobody gets anything.
Now, after almost 25 years, the 45th President of the United States has in some ways recreated history at the South Lawn of the White House, sitting beside the leaders of Israel, Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates. Donald Trump has broken a long-standing taboo when these leaders signed agreements normalizing relations with the State of Israel in what is being described as a strategic realignment in the Middle East. Now, the back-to-back agreements, which have drawn bitter condemnation from the Palestinians, marks what was earlier considered in many ways perhaps an improbable diplomatic victory for Donald Trump. However, Trump has promised to protect the Palestinian cause as well, and at the same time satisfy Israel.
Yeah, I think they come along, and they're already, obviously we speak to them. They've come a long way. We used to pay them $750 million a year when I got here, and I said to people that negotiated with them before, why did you pay when they treat the United States with such disrespect? They speak so badly. Death to America, death to Israel. I said, we give them $750 million a year. I said, why didn't somebody cut off those payments? Well, we didn't think it would be appropriate. I said, well, I do. And I cut off the payments to them, as you know. But other countries give them money. You're dealing with very rich countries. And these countries are now all signing with us. We spoke with the Crown Prince. So we've made tremendous strides. And this is peace in the Middle East without blood all over the sand. I say it. Right now, it's been blood all over the sand for decades and decades and decades. That's all they do, is they fight and kill people, and nobody gets anything. And this is strong peace, really strong peace. And it's a different way. We went in the back door, but I call it going in the very smart door. We went in the smart door, and we're getting people, and the Palestinians will absolutely be a member. I don't say that with any bravado. I just tell you the Palestinians will be a member at the right time, at the right time.
And also the Israeli Prime Minister, who was present while the signing of the accord took place, has described this accord as a pivot in the history which will herald a new dawn of peace.
And the blessings of the peace we make today will be enormous. First, because this peace will eventually expand to include other Arab states, and ultimately it can end the Arab-Israeli conflict once and for all.
All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of how this deal would actually play out, we are joined in by Jody Cohen, who is an international affairs expert who's joining us live from Jerusalem. Jody, thank you very much indeed for joining us in this broadcast on WION. And let me begin by asking you this. Try and tell us the significance of what it means for Israel to actually have normal, full, formal diplomatic relations with the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain.
Thank you, Mohammed. Yes, as you said, these are being called the Abraham Accords. And what does that refer to? That refers to the children of Abraham. And the Jewish and Muslim people across the world today are the descendants of Isaac and Ishmael, the children of Abraham. And this really is being seen as a peace between people, not just a peace between governments. I've had people reach out to me from the United Arab Emirates and from Bahrain over LinkedIn. I've had conversations for the first time ever with people in these countries, direct by telephone. there's a tremendous amount of excitement on the street level from the people, and they're really talking about this as a peace between the people, whereas the previous peace treaties between Jordan and Egypt and Israel were more at a governmental level. So there's a tremendous amount of excitement with people very keen to visit each other's countries and to meet each other. Saying that, there, of course, will be a tremendous amount of cooperation at the government level as well. There's talk of cooperation in intelligence, in security, economically, and of course in the fight against the coronavirus. But a real key word to these accords has been tolerance and a desire to end radicalization. And it's also an important signal to Iran, I believe. You're talking about the transformation geopolitically. This is an important signal to Iran specifically that the countries of the world are not going to just sit back and see them in their desire to get nuclear weapons, and when they talk about destroying Israel and destroying the United States. So this is really a combined front against Iran as well.
Absolutely. Now, a follow-up question would be, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain are both the allies of the Saudi Arabia. Do you expect Saudi Arabia would also come up with this kind of a deal with the state of Israel, where they would also like to go forth and have full formal diplomatic relations with Israel?
So I wouldn't want to specify exactly which countries, but we are hearing, yesterday there were reports from Trump talking about a further 5 or 6 countries joining the accords. And this morning I woke up to the news that that's been extended possibly to 7 or even 9 other countries. And you're absolutely right. Saudi Arabia is often talked about as one of those countries that could be perhaps on the list. They are seeing Bahrain and the response of the people there, and politically as well. They're seeing the response as a sort of a test case to see if they would join in. But they've already opened the airspace to flights from Israel, not just to the UAE and Bahrain, but also beyond that to the east. Oman is also talked about, another country that could be next. They sent a representative to the signing of the accords. Of course, they weren't involved in the ceremony themselves, but they sent important messages of congratulations to the UAE and Bahrain. And there are a number of countries that we've been hearing about who are for sure speaking to Israel, have relations with Israel behind the scenes, but are talking about coming out in the open with those relations.
Absolutely, indeed, Jody. Now, for peace to be established, it is important to have the Palestinian people also on board with any agreement that Israel would like to strike. Now, the fact of the matter is, although it has established full formal diplomatic relations and this deal has been hailed as historic, the Palestinians have described this deal as a betrayal of the Palestinian cause. And Netanyahu, as a part of a concession that he's made, he said that he's only suspending the annexation of certain parts of the West Bank. With that being the case, do you think this deal would actually go forth in establishing any kind of peace? Because the Palestinians are simply not on board on this.
I think there is a tremendous amount of optimism on the Palestinian front as well. Absolutely, right now, the Palestinian leadership are very frustrated. They feel that the bloc of Arab nations has been disrupted. We saw their attempts to have an emergency meeting of the Arab League, and that was denied, which was I would say, a first. We saw their attempts to pass a motion condemning the UAE at the Arab League, and that also failed. So a very, very strong sign from the Arab League that they are changing tack when it comes to the Palestinians. Now, that's not to say that they're abandoning the Palestinian people and that they don't want to work with Israel towards some sort of resolution, but there is an increasing amount of frustration with the Palestinian leadership that they have been offered a state over several occasions over the past decades, and at every opportunity they have turned down the opportunity for a state for their people. And these Arab states now are starting to say, well, we're not going to be held hostage to the Palestinian leadership, their failure to accept some sort of state, accept some sort of compromise.
All right, we'll have to leave there. Thank you very much indeed, Jody Cohen, for joining us and getting us all those insights into this very important deal that has been struck.